Okay, sorry, I was just making sure my computer is going. Okay, guys, so FSU. The monkey on everybody's back. I'm sorry, I just lost my view of myself. Anyway, okay, there I am. Sorry, I'm not very good at technology. Okay, Dallas and I have been interviewed by 3 news stations. 3. They've only aired 1. So, the one they aired was CBS. Wonderful people, heard us out. We went to the interview. It was, Claire's in the back, she's having her playtime. It was a 1-hour interview, basically. I'm thinking, like, wow, an hour, like, okay. And they told us ahead of time they want to make it about the Boy Scouts. That's great, There are things that we saw before the shooting that police are very interested in, but they're not releasing the information. Okay? If you've seen my YouTube video, you know what that information is. Okay? On 2 separate days, these are 2 completely separate days, like 6 weeks apart from each other, we saw Phoenix Eichner with a rifle headed towards downtown. He was wearing the exact same clothes that he wore at the actual shooting. He was carrying the exact same firearms that he had at the actual shooting. He was doing everything that he was doing, even driving at the same time as he did the day of the actual shooting. So we don't know if he was actually going to do the shooting that day or what was going on. Okay, I've already posted this in my YouTube video because I wanted an actual recording of what I remembered in case I ever get called to court about this. So they are not releasing that information. You will not find it anywhere on the internet because it's not released. So we've done interviews with ABC, who might want to do another one. We've done News4Jax, who partners with CNN, and we've done CBS. Okay? They have the full story, but they can't air it until the investigation is over and they get the records released and the police reports detail everything that was told to police. Because they want the police report, which is understandable. They want to be responsible journalists. Okay? That's wonderful. I went to journalism in high school and stuff like that with Frank H. Peterson. I think it's wonderful that they're trying to verify everything because there was a lot of misinformation coming out, and the producers are really locking down people saying, look, we got to make sure this is actually correct. So, 3 news stations already interviewed Dallas. Okay? Now, the one that aired, they wanted it to be about the Boy Scouts because CBS wanted the first interview. They got the 3rd, but they were the first to air the interview. It's all about being there first when you're in journalism. It's about getting the story first. We first aired this. We were the first on the scene. They want to be the first. Okay? So they know that other news stations have already interviewed him, but no one's aired anything because it's all tight-knit. It's all kind of under lock and key right now until the records release comes through. They've submitted for public records release. I'm okay with it. I don't have anything to hide, And we saw something that I wish we never saw. And everything is in my YouTube video, in case you guys didn't see it. But I got people, when the story aired, it was about Boy Scouts. Because they wanted to put Dallas on the air. They knew there was a lot more going on with this Boy Scout than, they were allowed to say. So if you watch News4Jax, they're like, well, we can't tell you what we know, but they know. Everybody knows. They're just not allowed to air it yet. So because Phoenix Eichner was shot in the jaw. For those of you who don't know, he was shot in the jaw. His face is all swollen. He's unrecognizable and he can't talk. So that's what they said, that he's opted not to talk to the police. It's because his jaw is like wired shut or something like that. It's crazy. So he can't talk, and he's not writing any confessions. So he has not gotten a lawyer. He's not even out of the hospital. So this could go on for a while. They might not release information for a long time. So there was an interview with Dallas about being a Boy Scout, being at the shooting, using his active shooter training, be prepared, all that good stuff. They just wanted an interview with him. They wanted to be the first ones to get any kind of interview. They're like, what can we air? because there's so much going on. Dallas looked the guy in the face, okay? Dallas saw Phoenix Eitner driving next to us and looked him in the face for like a mile or two. Phoenix Eitner was staring at my son with a rifle visibly on the front seat. Okay, again, totally different day, you know, totally different timeline, totally different thing. They're trying to make a timeline of what happened before the shooting. They consider that information critical, okay? Because it was 6 weeks prior to the shooting, and it was the same time, same everything, but he didn't shoot that day. He came back 6 weeks later and shot. We just happened, unfortunately, to come back 6 weeks later, too. So we saw the gunman 6 weeks before the shooting. And we got basically shot at, or, you know, whatnot, on April 17th when we went back to the Capitol. 2 completely different days, 2 completely different interactions. Okay, two completely different days, right? Now, people saw the Boy Scout thing, and they're kind of making fun of Dallas, and I have to go out and say, look, you know, there's more to the story. I got back to these people. I said, look, there's more to the story than they're releasing. They just wanted the first interview. They wanted to air the first interview with him because they know that he was the only person who looked Phoenix Eitner in the face before he shot 7 people. Okay? So Dallas was able to identify Phoenix Eitner as the driver of the orange Hummer. Okay? Eventually they did, you know, ID him at the hospital too and all that stuff. But nobody knew where he was before the shooting. So when we say, yeah, we saw him 6 weeks ago doing this exact same thing, he just didn't shoot anybody, they say that mass shooters usually plan up to 2 months, up to 90 days in advance, they'll plan the shooting. So we don't know what was going on that day. They're going to question him about it, believe me. And we're probably going to get called to court because we were the only ones who saw him with a rifle in the front seat driving towards downtown. And we were in the vicinity of, we had FSU, Florida A&M, and the Capitol. That's 3 gun-free zones. And he's driving into that with an assault rifle in the front seat and following us. And you can watch the YouTube video from March 5th, you know, about what happened on March 5th. So extremely alarming. Okay. We go back to the Capitol because Dallas, the reason we're at the Capitol is because he's working on merit badges. He had one that was citizenship in the nation. He did over the summer. He had to go down and visit the Capitol. He just had to tour the Capitol. You take a video. It's an Eagle required badge. You have to get this merit badge to get the rank of Eagle Scout. There's 14 Eagle badges that you have to get, and then you get 7 electives. It can be anything, but 14 that you have to have. You take your time earning the 14 of them over, it takes like years to become an Eagle Scout. So it takes, some kids work really hard and get it in 2 years. Dallas will probably have it by the time he's about 14, maybe 15, going on 16. He's kind of taking his time. He wants to do the whitewater rafting, you know, and stuff in the camping. He likes it, so he's just taking his time. But this was one of the badges that he has to do. Now, what happened was during COVID, you could do it virtually. You could do a virtual tour or a virtual meeting, or like you can log in and watch a meeting online. In January 2025, that went away. In January 2025, they said you have to go in person. You have to physically drive to these places and do it in person. It's now a requirement. They did away with the COVID waiver. Now they're saying as of January 2025, you have to do it in person. It's a requirement. You got to go in person. So March 5th, we're going down. We run into Phoenix Eitner. It's in the YouTube video. It's what I told police, okay? Self-explanatory. If you want to know, just watch the video. Then on April 17th, we find out there's a Florida Parent Education Association meeting. It's called Kids on the Capitol, and all the homeschool kids, including Dallas, were going to go to the Capitol, and they were all going to hang out together and just be homeschooled together, meet other homeschool kids. He was so excited. This was on April 17th, okay? It started at 10 a.m. We were going to go at 10 a.m. and then be home by noon. But we were running late that day. You know, I have a baby, and we try not to leave the house until 12 to 3. Like, that's our time slot when Claire takes her nap, is between 12 and 3. That's when we can go outside and do things, because Gary works from home. So Gary works from home, she's sleeping. Me and Dallas can go out and do whatever we need to do. Grocery store, volunteering, going down to the Capitol, you know. Anything we got to do, we can do it. Trip to the zoo, museums. So that's when Dallas homeschools, is between 12 and 3 every day, while Claire is sleeping, because even when we're home, there's no distractions. Gary's working, Dallas, you know, the baby's sleeping, Dallas can concentrate, everything's good. So I told the police, I know for a fact it was between 11 and 3 on March 5th, because we left early that day. And because I wanted time to, you know, do everything. And March 5th, and then April 17th, it was going to start at 10 a.m., but we didn't leave until 11, because we had to put Claire down. You know, we had to give her a bottle, give her a change, you know, give her a bath, make sure she was happy, feed her, you know. And so we didn't leave until like 11:15. And unfortunately, as we all know, by the time I got to Monroe in Tennessee, which is about, I think it's about 500 to 800 yards from where Phoenix Eichner was actually shooting, like somewhere, it's like, you know, it's somewhere between a quarter and a half mile. You think that's a lot of distance until you hear gunshots and you don't know how close they are. Now, people are trying to say, oh, that was a long way away. You weren't subject to gunfire. Let me tell you something. If you don't know what I do, or what I used to do for a career, just click on my profile. I think it's over here. Yeah, just click on my profile. It'll show you. I used to do simulations for active shooters with police, with all these things. I knew, like, what to do, but it's been like 10, 15 years since I've done it. So that's what people were like, Sarah, how did you not know what to do? You did active shooter simulations. It's been 15 years. You know, it's like, it's been a long time since I've done that. That's like asking a nurse that retired 20 years ago to start an IV. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I know how to do this, but it's been a while, you know? Like, you forget things. Use it or lose it. So people are like online looking at the Boy Scout story going like, what relevance is this? What does this have to do with anything? They don't know the whole story. They don't know that Dallas looked this guy in the face for like a mile and a half, driving into town with a freaking rifle on the front seat. Okay? And then he went on, we were like, whoa, he's weird, you know, he's following us, like, what the heck? And then he goes on to shoot 7 people. They don't know that part, because they can't air it, because the investigation's not over, because Phoenix got himself shot in the jaw and he can't talk. So their investigation isn't over, and it's not going to air until much later down the road, like way down the road. So they don't know that part. So they were being really mean. And I tell them, like, look, I was a female veteran in Iraq. I can take whatever you throw at me. You know, women in the military, yada, yada, yada. I heard it all. Say what you want about me, but leave my 13-year-old out. You know, just leave him out of it. The kid saw a mass shooting, looked the gunman in the face before, you know, and then we found out, we had to go through the trauma of finding out it was the same guy. Like, we were like, what? You know, that was him? Okay, Dallas was not eating or sleeping for like 3 days, okay? You can see the circles under my eyes. Maybe not now, because I finally got some rest. I've actually been sleeping better. But if you look at I'll post the interview, I had circles under my eyes like you wouldn't believe. Like, I didn't realize how bad they were until I was on television. And people were making fun of, like, what I was wearing, and, you know, we wanted 50 minutes of fame. And I'm like, we got shot at. We saw the gunman in the, like, face to face. Like, we were in a situation that we didn't want to be in. And ever since it happened, ever since Dallas said, yeah, I saw the gunman before the shoot, ever since that happened, we've been interviewed by Tallahassee Police Department, FDLE, FBI. We've had reporters running to us, like, wanting that story, because nobody knows what happened before the shooting. Everyone's like, what's the motive? What's the motive? I don't know what was going on March 5th. I don't think I want to know what was going on March 5th. But they were saying, oh, you were nowhere near the bullets. because you were 500 yards away. Like 500 yards, okay? He had a 45. A 45 goes 1,800 yards. 1,800 yards. We could have been over a mile away, and bullets still could have hit our car. Okay? And people were like, oh, well, you can see the gunman from Tennessee Street. We didn't claim that we did. We claimed we heard gunshots. And we were on the corner of Tennessee and Monroe, and yes, I ducked down. And when I ducked down, I looked up and saw people filming. You know, they were just like, oh, no one's calling 911. People are driving down the wrong side of the road, blowing through red lights, and going over crosswalks with people on them. Okay? And gunshots were ringing out. Everyone was doing whatever they had to do to get away. And it was like, God, I don't even think it was like 10 seconds or 30 seconds. The police just went past us. We're at a red light, and they're going around us like this. And then it's like, bang, 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 bang. And then it's an ambulance with the police around it. I'm like, well, that was fast. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, we couldn't even process what happened. That I tell my friends, that was the longest red light of my life. Like, of all the red lights I've been at, that was the longest one I've ever had in my life, is when you're actively, like, hearing gunshots and stuff. But people are like, oh, but the bullets weren't anywhere near you. Yes, they can hit you at 500 yards, 800 yards. A 45, I think, let me check really quick. Okay, I looked it up. Okay. A 45 ACP has a maximum range of around 1,800 yards, which is a mile. A 9mm is 2,300 yards, which is 1.3 miles, okay? People are like, oh, Sarah, oh, poor little Sarah, if you're scared of guns. No, I'm not scared of the guns. I'm scared of what the guns can do, because I know what they can do. I know they can hit us from all that way, okay? I was in the Army. I shot rifles. I know what the range is on those things. You can hit a target with a rifle from 300 yards. We saw a rifle in his car on a separate day, in his car, while he was driving towards downtown. We knew he had a rifle, okay? We didn't know who was shooting. We didn't know. I told the police, I thought it was robbery. And then it was like more shots and more and more. And then the police were like freaking closing in. I'm like, whoa, this is like, maybe this isn't a robbery. Like, I don't know. I just hear gunshots. I get down, you know, and we're at a red light. You can't move. There's nowhere you can go. We're like glimpsing out of the windows, seeing everything around us just fall apart. People just driving the wrong way to... Dallas saw a car, an SUV, drive the wrong way and nearly hit a pickup truck head on. Okay? And gunshots are ringing out. People are driving over crosswalks with people on them. It's just chaos. It is chaos. It's only 2 minutes. And we knew when we saw the ambulance and the police around it, we knew it was over. We knew we were good. We were like, okay. Light turns green. I hit the gas. I'm like, the whole time the shooting was going on and the light was red, I was looking at the crosswalk. I was just looking to make sure it was clear, because I'm thinking when that light turns green, I'm hitting the gas and getting the hell out of here. Okay? As anybody would want to. And so I'm just watching the crosswalk in front of me. That's the only thing. Like, I'm down. I'm looking at the people filming on the third balcony thinking, why are they not calling 911? And, you know, because they want to be on TikTok. They want to be on the media. Oh, I want my footage on, you know. They're not calling 911. Okay? And, you know, anyway, I'm a millennial. My son is Gen Alpha. We are not the Gen Z. We didn't whip out our phone and film Phoenix Eichner driving next to us on March 5th. Why would you do that? We were whipping out our phones, hoping to get a picture of a license plate so we could call the police and say, hey, there's some guy who's acting like he's on drugs following us, erratic, you know, and just, I don't want to swear, but, you know, and, you know, we speed up, he slows down, you know, we're like this, like, I speed up, he speeds up, I slow down, he slows down, he's, like, locked in on us, he's reaching for something, or pushing, like, he's either pushing the rifle or grabbing a pistol. We found out later he had a pistol, and I'm just like, And people were like, oh, you didn't really go through anything. We were on campus. We were on lockdown for 3 hours after they shot the gunman. After he went into custody, we stayed on lockdown for 3 hours, and we legitimately feared for our lives. Look, I have respect for people who fear for their lives. I do. But you can't discount or discredit what my son and I went through on Tennessee Street, where the bullets were flying through open air and could easily hit us and kill us. He might not have been aiming for us, but they ricochet. They go through cars. They go through windows. We're in a car surrounded by windows. Who's to say the bullet didn't, ricochet off of a post and hit the car? Like, these things happen. Bullets can go. They can curve. They can hit things and change direction. People who don't know guns don't know that. They don't understand that you can aim this way, have the bullet ricochet. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do the screen. You can aim this way, have the bullet ricochet, and go a completely different way. It can go bing, bing, like that. And you didn't aim that way. The bullet just hit something and changed direction. That happens all the time. There were people when they get shot, the bullet can ricochet in their body. They could be sitting next to something, hiding behind a desk. It could hit the desk and ricochet into them. That stuff happens. And people are like, oh, but he wasn't aiming. He wasn't. Like, honey, do you not know what guns are? When you hear gunfire, you get down. You don't get out to look around for the guy. You get down. They're criticizing that we weren't out looking around for the guy. And I'm like, what? Come on, aren't you guys an active shooter generation? Of course we're not out looking around for the guy. You guys should, but they were like, oh, you were nowhere near it, The bullets can ricochet and change direction and come through your windshield. I was scared. Okay, I was in Iraq. Everybody knows that. Okay. I was in a mortar attack. I was hit by the first mortar. There was a person, not in my unit, but in my combat aviation brigade, who was hit by the third. He passed away from his injuries, okay? I got injured in that same attack. I've been in situations where I have been injured, another person has been injured, and that person died. This was not a flashback. This was not a bad memory. This was really happening. Okay? This was actively unfolding around us. And it's like, why do these kids think they have the right to judge? You're like, oh, you weren't on campus. Those bullets ricochet. Those bullets did ricochet and hit buildings across the street opposite of campus, because he was hitting the emergency poles and the light poles and the brick walls and stuff, and it was ricocheting and going the other direction. People are like, oh, but he didn't aim at you. He doesn't have to. Those bullets are gonna go until they hit something. He doesn't have to aim at us. That's what people don't understand. They don't get it. They don't know what a firearm actually does. Again, if you look at my little profile here, it says active shooter simulations for Volusia County Sheriff's Department, combat simulations at SRI International, and TAC Worldwide. I studied fire and emergency services at UF. I also studied criminal justice, including a guns and violence course that went over active shooters and mass shooter profiling while I was at FSU. Or I'm sorry, not FSU, FIU. Sorry, I'm very tired. I'm thinking about the FSU shooting, and I actually went to FIU. So I took a guns and violence course where we studied gun violence. And it wasn't just active shooters, it was, just statistics, things that are known to be true. 20% or 80% of firearms are owned by 20% of the population. It's a statistic, it's true. If you have a lot of guns in the house, you're X amount of times more likely to commit suicide. Or, states that have, like Texas has the biggest suicide rate for guns because they have open carry. Everyone has guns in Texas. So the suicide rates are higher because guns are accessible, And it's just, we studied the statistics, and I knew when Phoenix Eichner was driving next to me on March 5th, I knew the profile of an active shooter is They usually have some kind of substance abuse history, okay? I don't know if Eichner did or not, but he was doing this like he was smoking or snorting or something. He was doing something, and he was acting like he was on drugs. He was like all erratic and stuff. So I found out he took medication for emotional dysregulation, and he stopped taking his meds. I'm not sure if he picked up a drug habit or what. I don't know. I'm not trying to claim anything. I don't know. But he was moving his hand around erratically like he was possibly, I thought maybe he was smoking weed or something. I don't know. I told the police. I thought maybe we drove up on him and he startled because maybe he was smoking marijuana and trying to hide it or something. I don't know. I don't know why he got so startled. But I saw the rifle in the front seat and I was like, and because it caught me off guard. Who would not be caught off guard by a guy who's acting erratically, college age, and driving to downtown Tallahassee with a rifle in the front seat where there's 2 state universities in the capital? Who wouldn't be like, it's kind of odd. Who wouldn't be that way? But I'm just kind of like, okay. Drive. He hit the brakes, and I just kept driving, and I'm like, well, he hit the brakes real fast. What's that about? And then I start thinking, and I'm driving, and I get a good distance. I get like maybe 3 or 4 car like the distance of a car, like 3, 4 cars distance in front of him. And I'm just like, something's not right. There's something going on here. And I get in front of him just because I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm thinking like, is he just going to the gun range? I'm just driving in front of him at this point. I'm like, is he going to the gun range? Where's the gun range? Gun range's on the south side of town. Why would he be taking Thomasville and going through a gun-free zone to go to the gun range? Why is he, acting this way? Why did he startle when we were just gradually passing him? Like, what is, why does he have a rifle in the front seat of his car? What is going on here? Like, what is happening? And before I can even make a decision on what to do, he drives around and starts glaring at us. He's just driving. I speed up, he speeds up, I slow down, he slows down. He's just driving next to us. And now I'm thinking, okay, he's up to something. Something is going on. People are like, how did you know he was a mass shooter? 1, profiling, okay? I hate to say it, but I profiled the guy. I hate to admit that. I didn't call the police or anything, but in my mind, I had that class, I knew the statistics, I knew the profile, and I'm just like, he matches that profile. So I'm thinking, he matches that profile, but instead of jumping to conclusions, what other reason could he have? Is he going to a gun show? Did he just buy the rifle? I'm thinking about all of these possibilities. Is he an active shooter? That did go through my mind as a possibility. But again, I'm just driving in front of him to give myself, I'm slowing down, I'm trying to give myself time to assess the situation of what I just saw. He decides to just go like this, okay? Like, he decided to do that, not us. People said, how did you know something was wrong? How did you know that there was possibly a shooting that was going to happen? That's how. We gradually passed by him, got a significant distance, okay? We're like this far, and then we just kind of passed like a normal, we didn't cut him off. We just got some distance, and I'm thinking, what? And then I just kind of got some distance, and because I wasn't going to cut him off knowing he had a rifle in the car. I wanted some distance from this guy. And I'm just, you're talking about just maybe 10, 15 seconds that I have to think before the guy's like coming up on me, okay? And I don't have enough time to assess the situation. I did not know 100%. I knew it was a possibility. When I saw the gun and I saw the driver and how he was acting, I knew it was a possibility. But I was trying to think of any possible reason why this guy's driving into downtown Tallahassee with a rifle in the car. I'm trying to think of any other reason. Because a lot of rednecks like to get on the internet and say, well, Farrah, people in Leon County have guns. I know. And I write them back. You have to think about all of everything, the entirety of the circumstances. Yes, people have guns in Florida. I'm not afraid of guns. I see people driving down the street with guns hanging out of their truck. I don't care. But when a person is acting like they're on drugs and they're young and they're in that 18 to 21, and to be honest, I didn't quite remember the whole 21 and up law with Florida, but the guy looked young, like 18, 19 years old. It turns out he was 20. He was young. Like, he looked like a teenager, okay? And that's why I'm kind of like, he's extremely young looking. And I thought he was probably a college student or something. He was that young. He was acting erratic, okay? He had a rifle in the front seat of his car, which was an orange Hummer. Not a lot of those. And he's driving, we're like maybe 2 or 3 miles from the Capitol. And I'm thinking, like, this kind of is bringing a lot of red flags for active shooter. I'm sorry, but that was it was maybe like the second or third thing that I considered. At first I'm thinking, oh, he's just going to the gun range, and I pass him, and then he's acting erratically. He's, like, as I'm passing him, he's just acting erratic, and he's hitting the brakes, and he's doing all this weird stuff. And that's what caught my attention. It wasn't that he had a rifle in the front seat of the car. It was his behavior about being seen with a rifle in the front seat of a car. If a guy's just driving on the street and he's got his gun and he's like, oh, what's up? No problem. If a guy's going down the street with a rifle in his car and it's like, hey, what's up? And he's like, hide it. Oh, God, you didn't see anything. You didn't see anything. That's a red flag. I told people that's how I knew something was terribly wrong. Because a guy that has nothing to hide isn't going to try to hide things. Okay? But when you're doing this and hitting the brakes, it was like, what was that about? It wasn't so much the rifle in the window. It was the rifle in the window and his behavior. Okay? Frantic, hitting the brakes, trying to, like, hide the gun. And he's very young and he's going towards downtown Tallahassee. I'm sorry, but those 3 things, the location, okay, the fact that he's going into a gun-free zone, he's heavily armed, obviously, and he's erratic behavior, those 3 things are the circumstances. And then you add the profile of 18 to 20-year-old white male on top of that, that's not something I can ignore. I'm sorry. I might be guilty of profiling, but I was right. I'm sorry. I might have profiled, but I was right. And I didn't profile because of his race or his age or whatever. I profiled all of those things together. You put them all together and you say, oh my God, I think I know what's going on here. I realize what's happening. And that's how I knew. He knew I knew, so he left. Came back 6 weeks later and then did the shooting. Because he knew that I knew. We had like this exchange of looks. Like, he knew. I was like, oh boy. Like, just, it wasn't like, oh, I saw a gun in the front seat, call 911. It wasn't that. I just passed the guy, but his behavior. At first I was like, whoa. It's right there in my face, like right, like this is my window and there's like 2 feet and then there's like the gun like right here. Like, it's not something I expected to see. So maybe I had a facial expression. Maybe I was like, what the, like what, I make these facial expressions sometimes and I have no control over them. They're my honest, genuine reaction to things. So I might have been like, and he might have seen that. But an honest man has nothing to hide, is what I've always been told. And this guy was hiding. He was trying not to be seen. He was hitting the brakes. He was, and even Dallas looked at me and was like, Mom, should we call the cops? Like, even a 13-year-old was picking up on what I was picking up on, okay? Even a 13-year-old could look at that situation and go, This ain't right. 13-year-old, okay? Never been to college, never had any police training. Even a 13-year-old, we both got that gut feeling that you just can't ignore. You get that feeling inside you that something's terribly wrong. It's because something's terribly wrong. You know, it is. It's a gut instinct, and it's just. But yes, most of the time, if you feel like something's terribly wrong about a situation, it's because something's terribly wrong. You just don't know what. But I got people on Facebook reacting to Dallas's Boy Scout interview, like, what does a Boy Scout have to do with this? Yada, 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 you know. They just don't know the whole story. And they're typing, and then I tell them what actually happened, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll delete this comment. There was an adult. He works for Dark Knight Security Solutions. He's a grown man. I'm sorry. It says experiencing connection issues. He's a grown man. And he's like, that boy needs to be beat up at school. And I'm like, what? I'm like, he just went through a mass shooting. He saw the gunman before the shooting, looked him in the face. And, like, this kid hasn't been through enough, and now you're saying he needs to go get beat up at school because he's a Boy Scout? And I told people, like, I thought, like, I knew adults would criticize me. I get that. They were like, oh my gosh, what is she wearing? Well, I haven't slept in 2 days, so I didn't get a good look at what I was wearing because I got shot at with my kid in the car, and I was trying to get out of the situation, and I haven't slept in days because I've been through this situation before. It's just re-traumatizing all over again. I probably have to go back to a counselor. But me and Dallas were barely eating or sleeping for days. Like, we were, like, brain dead. Okay? The circles under my eyes in those interviews are real. Okay? I did not try to hide them. And they were very real. That interview happened on Saturday, so I had not slept Thursday night or Friday night. That was about 2 or 3 days of just barely sleeping, hardly eating anything. Because we were so, like, you could see the trauma in the circles under my eyes, okay? Because we realized it was the guy that we saw on March 5th. That's what freaked us out. It wasn't so much the gunshots or anything, it was having encountered the guy beforehand. And now everyone, the police, the media, everyone's trying to figure out, okay, what was that March 5th incident about? What was he, like, something was going on there. Now everyone's trying to figure out, you know, why would he stare at Dallas in his Boy Scout uniform? Was he a Boy Scout? Was he, you know, hiding the rifle and trying to reach for a pistol to shoot us? Like, what was going on? You know, it's just, what was going on with Phoenix Eichner on that day, on that moment? And people don't know that happened, so now we got people saying, oh, you said you saw the gunman? Well, how did you see him from Tennessee and Monroe? We didn't say we saw him from Tennessee and Monroe. We saw him on 2 separate occasions, at 2 different locations, on 2 different days, at 2 different times, okay? That's why you can be in the shooting, but having seen him weeks prior. That can happen. You see somebody, you know, that's what I'm saying. And people are like, well, I don't believe you. I don't care. There's so many times I come home from Iraq and people are like, I don't believe your Iraq story. I don't care what you believe or choose to. I don't care what people choose to make their reality. I don't. There are people who will live in denial and just never believe the truth. And I have to respond to these people like as civil as I humanly possibly can. And of course, there's always the bully. I wasn't bullying. The bully always says I wasn't bullying. Always. There was a guy that was like completely deleting his comment because he said, wow, I hope he got his 15 minutes of fame. And I had to reply and say my son and I were subjected to gunfire. Oh, you weren't being shot at? Well, they can ricochet. They can go for 1,800 yards and ricochet and hit cars and hit people. The guy doesn't have to aim at us. You know, the bullet goes until it lodges into something. And sometimes that's a person, sometimes it's a window, it's a car. A bullet could have gone through things that he never aimed at. It happens. There's cases where a bullet will hit a ceiling and then curve along the ceiling and then hit somebody on the floor. Even though he aimed at the ceiling, he can hit the ceiling and end up down on the floor and hit somebody. It happens. It's just, people literally don't know anything about firearms. And, and where those bullets go and how far they can go and how much damage they can do when they get there. It's mind-boggling. People think that a bullet only goes 50 feet because you can hit a target with a gun for 50 feet. So they think the bullet only goes 50 feet. No, the bullet goes from 1,800 yards until it hits something. They don't get that. You can fire down the road and that bullet's going to fly down the road until it hits something. And if it hits something, it's either going to lodge in it, or worse, it's going to ricochet and hit something else. And I feel bad for what happened to the FSU kids. I really do. The gunman was taken down at noon, and they were notified of an active shooter several minutes after he was taken down. And I'm really horrified that they had to go through an active shooter drill. They had to feel for their lives for hours, not knowing if the person coming down the hall was SWAT or the gunman. They had to live through that. That's traumatizing, okay? But to say that somebody that was actually exposed to gunfire on a street corner, that the gunman was just down, like 2 blocks down, firing away, that we're somehow not valid because we're not students of FSU? Like, I'm sorry, but a bullet doesn't care where you go to school. It doesn't. It doesn't care what t-shirt or hoodie you're wearing. It doesn't care. It doesn't, it's an inanimate object. It does not have feelings. It does not pick and choose where it goes. Physics decides that, okay? And, a bullet doesn't care where you go to school. That should be a slogan. God dang. So, anyway, but I'm just letting you guys know that, yes, there's adults out there who are criticizing a child who survived a mass shooting, who think that a bullet only goes 50 feet and doesn't ricochet, it doesn't go for 1,800 yards, it doesn't ricochet, it doesn't lodge into people that the gunman didn't aim at. They live in this little bubble of just not knowing, of just ignorance, of not understanding the situation as it actually is in reality. When you fire a gun, you don't have any control where your bullets go. Even when you aim at something, it can go through that and still hit something else. You don't have control over what that bullet does. You can aim, but you can aim at a target, not hit your target. It could fly past somebody, go through a window and hit somebody you didn't even intend to shoot. It can ricochet and go the other direction. It's an inanimate object. It doesn't have feelings. It's not going to see a child and say, oh no, I'm just going to go around this child. No, it hits the child. It doesn't care. The bullet doesn't care. I know that, okay? I think a lot of these kids, it's great they have active shooter training, but they need to be taught, like, what bullets are, and like they need to be taught this stuff. I teach my son, and God forbid he ever gets a hold of a gun, okay? That's not going to happen, because we don't own guns, so I don't own guns, but it just kind of irritates me that we have just started getting back to normal, and then this one little thing aired, and people suddenly see 30 seconds of an hour. It was an hour interview that was cut down to like 10 or 30 seconds. And suddenly they think they know everything. They think they know where the gunman was, or where I was able to see him or not, or this or that, or no, you can't see the gunman standing from this far. I'm like, lady, you weren't there. I said, unless you were in my car with me, you don't know what happened. You don't know what I saw or what we went through, because you were not in that car with us. We were sitting idle at a red light, and mass shooters, it's a numbers game for these people. It is a numbers game. It's about how many can I get. How many can I get? When you're sitting idle in traffic and a gunman is shooting, he shot like 30 rounds. You don't have any control. They were in brick buildings, okay? God bless them for being safe. But they were in brick buildings. We were in a car surrounded by glass, okay, with a maniac shooting. And we just found out that we happen to know the guy or whatever. We don't know him, but we saw him. We warned police about him. And they're like, oh no, that was the police down the street having a practice. No, the police were down the street because I called them 6 weeks ago. saying there's a guy driving around downtown towards the Capitol with a rifle in the front seat. They were staged. They got my call 6 weeks ago. They were staged there because they were waiting for shit to go down. They were staging there. They weren't practicing. They were waiting. They knew this guy was driving around with a rifle. They were just waiting for him to show up. Okay? That's how he got taken down in 2 minutes. It's not a coincidence. They weren't practicing down the street. They were staged in that area because they were anticipating an incident. Because I called them 6 weeks ago. I don't know what it is with people. They see something, they're internet sleuths. Now, I'm kind of guilty of it myself. I like to watch crime shows and go, like, I like to watch unsolved things and kind of look at it and go, take my education in criminal justice, in criminal investigation, kind of take it and go, I wonder if maybe it was this guy or that guy, or maybe this happened, have they considered this? But I don't go on the internet and try to solve homicides. I just keep that to myself, okay? Everyone's entitled to their opinion or whatever. But I don't actively try to police people in reality. I don't do that. That's not my role in society. My role in society is a mother. When gunshots went out, my son was next to me. Get down. When we got to the Capitol, they said there was a second shooter. They wouldn't let us out of the building. And I'm thinking, okay, now what do we do? That's the story where my son took over from that point. Okay? Because they let us in the Capitol, and they said there's a second shooter. We wanted to leave. They said, no, you can't. That's when I turned to Dallas and say, okay, what do we do now? We're in a building. I don't know the building. You've been here before. What do we do? And he said that if you go to the second floor, the windows are all boarded up and stuff. So we went to the second floor. So the people are like, oh, she didn't know what to do. Oh, mommy had a meltdown. Oh, no. Mommy got shot at, went to safety, got put in a lockdown on a Capitol with people, Capitol police were coming out with vests and rifles. And I'm looking at my son going like, you got any ideas? Because I'm out of ideas here. Okay? Mommy didn't have a meltdown. Someone referred to Dallas as my emotional support animal. No. 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 Just because I'm an Iraq vet doesn't mean I have an emotional support animal or that I use my son for emotional support. No. Okay? Never in that interview would you see me cry. It was an hour that was cut down into like less than a minute. Okay? People were like, oh, she didn't grow up with Columbine? I talked about Columbine in the interview. It was edited out. They talked to Gary for like an hour. They edited him completely out. They wanted to make it about the Boy Scout. Okay? Because that's all they're allowed to say. They know this kid is involved, okay, with the investigation. They want to get him on the air. They want to be the first, but there's so much they're not allowed to talk about. So when we were talking about the case, they edited everything out because it's unreleased information. They're not allowed to air it. So they only put the few little things that the producer said, okay, this is cute. He's a Boy Scout. This is cute, or whatever. And his Scoutmaster said, I wanted the interview to be with him and his Scoutmaster. And his Scoutmaster couldn't make it that day. So I said, well, I guess it's going to be you and me, buddy, because your Scoutmaster can't make it. And I thought they were going to interview like him and Gary, because Gary was the Eagle Scout. But they told me it's going to be about the Boy Scouts. So I was okay with that. I'm sorry if I'm ranting. But, these people are online who know nothing, and they're trying to be like, well, I don't believe you. I think you're lying. How could you see the gunman from Tennessee? I tell them repeatedly, 2 different incidences, 2 different days. You can see somebody on Monroe Street one day, and you can see them on Monroe Street another day, or get shot at another day, or whatever, okay? 2 different days. They won't listen to me. So if you guys see this interview and you're like, oh, poor Dallas or whatever, these people who are commenting, some of them are supportive, which is great. Some of them are just ignorant as you could ever imagine. Those are the people that think it's like a conspiracy, that like, they paid us to get shot at or something. It's all a conspiracy. Those people are popping up. I told one girl, because she said, how did you see, she just kept getting in debates. And I said, look, I saw this on YouTube. I stole this from Dr. Mike. I repeated what he said on the YouTube video. If you're not going to listen to anything I have to say, then why are we having a conversation? Do my words hold any value if you're not going to consider them? If you're just dead set on never changing your mind about what you believe happened, even though you weren't there. She wasn't there, but she's like, this is what I think happened. She wasn't there, wasn't anywhere near it, but she's criticizing the person who was. What's the point of having a conversation if my words are not going to hold any value? If I'm going to tell you what happened and you're not going to believe it, why would I have that conversation with you? If you're just dead set on it's all fictional, it's all made up, oh, they must have paid you off to get shot at. No, it happened, okay? They're not going to release everything right away. It's probably going to be a month, okay? Dallas is okay. I'm okay. Dallas was kind of getting a little post-traumatic stress, but he's doing better now. Okay? When you get shot at, you don't know who's shooting at you. You don't know how many... You can hear the gunshots, but you don't know how close they are. You don't know anything. They were close enough for me to know, holy crap, that's close. Okay? If you go to a gun range and someone's shooting from 200 yards out, you can hear the gunshots. There was somebody online, I kid you not. There was somebody responding, how can you hear the gunshots from inside a car? Just like you can hear the gunshots from inside a building. Only they're louder and closer and you're surrounded by glass instead of a brick wall. Like, come on, guys. Common sense here. There was somebody that literally thought if you go inside a car, you can't hear gunshots on the street 500 yards from you if you're inside a car, that you can't hear the gunshots. This is how uneducated these kids are. They don't know how far a bullet can go. They don't understand the concept of it ricocheting and hitting people that they didn't aim at. And that just because you're in a car with a tiny little thing of glass does not soundproof your vehicle from bullets. And a bullet doesn't care if you're a child or what. It doesn't care what school you go to. They're upset because Dallas was on the news and he's not an FSU student. We were in the shooting, but we weren't FSU students. So why are they airing this? It's not an FSU kid. The FSU kids were on lockdown 2 to 3 minutes after the gunman was shot. We saw the police go past us. Boom, boom, boom. He's in an ambulance going back towards us, going back across. It was over in like 2 minutes. Light turned green. I was looking at the crosswalk the whole time, waiting, begging for the light to turn green. When it did, I hit the gas. I got out of there. And sorry if this is like a therapy session, but my God, these kids, they think that if you go inside a car, you're not going to hear the gunshots. They were put on lockdown for hours and hours and hours after the gunman had already been taken down. They still feared for their lives, and they're on the news talking about how they feared for their lives. They were in a brick building, and the gunman had been taken down hours earlier. But they're on the news because they're survivors. Okay. Yes, the thing is that I'm trying to get at is perspective, okay? Fearing for your life is a terrible thing. Whether you're in FSU, hours after the shooting, hours after the gunman got taken down, if you're still there not knowing what's going on and fearing for your life, that fear is exactly the same as actually getting shot at. It's the same fear. No one should have to experience that. But you have to acknowledge it. Because my son is now being bullied for being alive because people who weren't there thought he wasn't close enough to the shooting. Yeah, you heard that right. People who weren't there are going on Facebook and saying he wasn't close enough to the bullets being fired at us. We're on Tennessee Street. There's Tennessee Street. Okay, let's pretend that this is Tennessee Street right here, okay? This little line of my fingers. This is Tennessee Street. There's a little line of trees and a sidewalk, and then you're on FSU right here. This is Tennessee Street. This is a public road that anyone's on. Anyone can drive this. He parks on Tennessee Street, gets out and shoots every direction, and then says, hey, there's people on the green. I could get a lot of those. Boom, 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 boom. He was shooting at businesses across from FSU. He was shooting at people on Tennessee Street. And then he was like, hey, there's a lot of people over there at FSU. I think I'll go shoot up FSU. That'll get me points. And it did. They're reporting it as a school shooting, when in reality, those bullets went everywhere, at everyone that was on Tennessee Street. They're reporting it as a school shooting, but the guy was on Tennessee Street. He parked on Tennessee Street, walked towards FSU, and just said, I can get a lot of people going that way. If he had walked down Tennessee Street, he would have run into us. And he would have probably seen us sitting idle in our car, you know, not wanting him to shoot in our car, okay? It wasn't about how close we were to the shooting. It was the choice of which direction the gunman wanted to go on that day. The kids at Sandy Hook, he walked in and turned this way and shot up these classrooms. He decided, oh, I'll just go this way. You think the kids over here weren't just as freaking terrified? That they weren't survivors too? Oh, I'll just go this way. The guy on Tennessee Street, okay, when he came up to Tennessee Street, he shot everywhere and then said, I'm going to go this way. If he had gone this way, we probably wouldn't be here. Okay? And FSU was all over here. He could have gone down Tennessee Street. This would be all FSU. If he had just come down this way, he would have seen us at the red light sitting idle in our cars and probably shot into our car. It's a simple thing of what direction did he want to walk that day? Okay? If he had walked towards Monroe, towards the Capitol, which FSU and the Capitol like kind of border each other, if he had walked that direction, he would have run into us. But people are online who weren't anywhere near Tennessee Street that day. They're online going like, yeah, but he shot up FSU. Yeah, he turned his attention towards FSU after looking around and going, who can I shoot? And realized, hey, there's a lot of kids over there. It's a numbers game. If he had walked, you know, the quarter of a mile down Tennessee Street with the pistol, he would have got a lot more people because we were all sitting in our cars at an intersection. There was dozens of people. He could have just decided to put a pistol in his pocket, walk down to Monroe in Tennessee and open fire. He would have gotten a lot more of us. He would have gotten a lot more of us, okay? And that's terrifying because I'm not trying to inspire anybody, okay? It is what it is. And it's just, you know, but there were kids in brick buildings with staff that were going to help them. Doors that shut. They weren't stuck in a red light surrounded by glass, hoping that the gunman walks that way and not this way. They don't know what's that like, and they don't know what that's like. It's scary enough as an adult, but when you have your kids sitting next to you, it's 10 times scarier. It's 10 times scarier because pretty much everything that went through my mind was watching my son grow up. Holding him as a baby, watching him grow up to be a 13-year-old boy. That's pretty much everything that was going on my mind. That and, dear God, please don't let him come around to the cars. Because there were maybe 10 or 15 cars sitting idle at a red light. And we were like one of the first, I think we were in the front. We were either in the front, there might have been like one car ahead of us, I don't know. But we couldn't move. There was nowhere for us to go. And I just remember hearing the gunshots, seeing the police drive around us, looking at my son, and thinking about every baby picture I ever took. Every baby picture I ever took. His kindergarten graduation. Just every moment in his life. He just went whitewater rafting last weekend, or before the shooting, the weekend before the shooting. He went on his first whitewater trip. I got pictures. He had a great time. And I'm sitting there at a red light, can't move, gunshots, police going around us, thinking about every moment of my kid's life that I got to see. Because his window was facing the direction of where the bullets were being fired. It was on his side. And I just remember thinking, like, if a bullet comes through a window and kills my son, because I knew it was a possibility. I knew that they could ricochet. I knew they could go for 1,800 yards. And there was enough of them to actually fear for our lives. But all I could think about, people were like, what were you thinking? Because I kind of just drew a blank, and all I could think of, my son's life was flashing through my eyes, because I've been there since he was born. My son's life, not my life, my son's life was flashing through my eyes. And I thought of him as a baby, I thought of him as a kindergartner, I thought of him as a second grader, I thought of him as a fifth grader, I thought of him as a middle schooler, and now here he is, 13 years old. You know, working on, joining Boy Scouts at 11, you know, going on his first, just everything was just flashing through my eyes, and I'm thinking, dear God, please don't let it end now. Please don't let this end now. He's got his whole life ahead of him. He wants to be an Eagle Scout, you know, and so as a mom, if I had gone through that myself, I'd just look out for myself. But when your kid's sitting next to you, looking at you to save them, and you're stuck at a red light with a gunman down the block, and you can't get out of that situation, you feel like a failure. You do. You're like, I can't save myself, I can't save you, I can't do anything, there's nothing we can do. So thank God the police showed up and stopped that guy. Because from what I understand, he was walking down the sidewalk shooting people. He was just walking the other direction, thank God. He was just walking the other direction. If he had taken a left instead of a right, he would have run into us. And there's no doubt in my mind that in 2 minutes, it's a 4-minute walk between where the shooting was and where we were parked. Like, we were at a red light. It's only like a 3 or 4 minute walk. If he had decided to walk towards our direction, he would have definitely come up on us. There's just no doubt about it. And there's no doubt in my mind that somebody like that would not hesitate to shoot into cars that are waiting idly at a red light. Perfect law-abiding people. And, you know, he did not care who he was shooting. He was just, how many can I get? So he walked the opposite direction of us, thank God. And if he had walked, like I said, if he had taken a left, he would have run into us. But he took a right, and he was just walking casually down the sidewalk with a pistol, pulling out his pistol, shooting anyone he came across. If he had taken a left and continued walking down, he would have run into us. So God was on our side that day. Luck was on our side that day. I really feel bad that he turned right, though, because he did end up killing people and hurting people. But I do know if he had turned left, he would have killed a lot more people, because there were so many of us sitting at that red light, just idle, like terrified to move, because we're worried if we drive, we're going to attract his attention, he's going to shoot us. And it's, you know, they shoot at anything that moves. They're just looking for movement, you know, and it's a numbers game with these people. They don't care. He doesn't care about my son. He doesn't care about me. But there's people who go online and judge and say, oh, he walked the other direction. You think that's any less terrifying than being in a building for 3 hours not knowing if there's a gunman in it? They were locked down for 3 hours with no gunman in the building. Never heard gunshots, nothing. They just got an alert on their phone. They're like, oh God, you know, never heard gunshots, nothing. We heard the gunshots. We had seen the guy on a previous occasion going into downtown with a rifle in his front seat, staring at us. We saw the cops. We heard the gunshots of them shooting him and taking him in the ambulance. And it's just, people are like, oh, that's not valid because you're not an FSU student. What? Bullets don't care what school you go to. So, anyway, I don't expect anyone to watch this. I just wanted to kind of clear my frustration, I guess. So, you guys take care, okay? Bye.